Welcome back. In the previous few steps, we learned a lot about JWT and how to configure it in the back end. And now let's shift our attention to the front end. In 28 minutes, dummy, login. Oops, invalid credentials. The reason is because we have turned off basic authentication. We are now using JWT token based authentication. We need to update our front end to react to that. Let's look at how to do that in this specific step. Let's go to the basic authentication service. We would need to create a new method to execute the JWT authentication. What I'll do is I'll take a shortcut. I'll create a simple method in here. Let's extend the method which is present in here. I'll copy the execute service which we wrote earlier, execute authentication service. I'll call this execute JWT authentication service. Instead of the basic auth string, what we'll have with the JWT, what do we need to do? Will we have a basic authentication with JWT? What was the first request that we sent? With JWT, the first request that we sent to get the token was a post request to the /authenticate URL. So we don't really need to worry about the basic authentication and the headers in here. So what we would need to do is to send a authenticate. We don't really need the headers. We would want to do a post actually. We want to do a post, and we would not be getting the authentication bean, so I'll make it any, so to represent any object. We will not be having the headers in here. So you'd want to do a post to /authenticate. Usually with post, you'd need to send a number of parameters, right? So what would be the things that we would need to send over here? You need to send the username and the password. So this would create a JSON object with username colon whatever username is present, password colon whatever is present. So the body would be containing the username and the password. So we are sending a post request to the authenticate URL with the username and password. And once the response comes back, where would the token be? The token would be inside the response, right? So the token which you would want to store is bearer space. Let's create a variable. So I'll replace the double quotes with tick so that the variable gets replaced. Tick, tick, tick. And from the response, what do we want to pick up? The token, right? Let's look at a sample in the RESTlet client. So we want to send a post request to the authenticate with username and password, and what we would get back is the token in the body, and that's exactly what we are doing in here. So we are sending a request to authenticate. The body is username and password. This is kind of a JavaScript shortcut. If you create an object with list of variables, what it does is it would create a proper structure. So it would create username, name of the variable, username, colon, value, password, colon, value. JavaScript makes it easy to create JSON requests. And once we get the response back, we are picking up the token and we are creating the bearer string and setting it as the token. Let's see what would happen when I save this and when I go to our to-dos application and try and log in. In 28 minutes, dummy. Login. Oops, invalid credentials. Let's inspect and see what the error is. The request is going to basic auth. Do you know the reason why it's going to basic auth? Because we have not tied up the execute JWT authentication service yet. From the login component, what is called handle basic auth login. So let's go to login component.ts. This is what is being called. What we want to do now is in the handle basic auth login, we would want to call a different thing. So what I'll do is instead of changing the basic auth logging thing, I'll create a handle JWT auth login and change this method to call execute JWT login. So execute JWT authentication service. Rest of the stuff would remain as it is. All that I need to do is change the login.html to call this specific thing. I will need to take the copy of this button, comment this out and change the method call to this. So let's remove the commented lines of code which are present inside this method. And let's save this, refresh the page, close this, and enter in 28 minutes dummy and log in. Cool. There you go. You see the welcome message, get welcome message, to-dos page, update, delete, and add a new to-do. Cool, right? So what we are now using is JWT, or token based authentication. So if you look at any of the requests which are going out on the network, go to home, come back to to-dos, and the to-dos request goes out, you'd see that all the request headers would contain a bearer. So if you just go further down, you'd see that authorization, bearer, and the token. First of all, I would really love to congratulate you on your journey. We have talked about AngularJS, we have talked about Spring Boot, REST API. We connected a full stack application from the backend to the front end following a number of best practices. And now we also learned about basic authentication and JWT and were able to connect everything up. This is an awesome journey which took me a lot of effort to set up. These are a wide range of technologies and standards which we are bringing together during this course. I'm sure you also had a wonderful time. There are still a lot of things that we would want to learn in the next few steps. So don't go anywhere, and I'll see you in the next step.